Howdy everyone. Alright, so I am working on these front cover pieces that you see here, these front ones. This one is done, and I am moving on to the one that goes on this side here. So one of the first things that I need to do is I need to figure out how to locate the angle bracket that mounts to this side piece here. So what I do is, there's many ways that you can do this, but what I chose to do was basically just to lay some type of a straight edge across the face of this bracket and the face of this bracket. Just lay it across both of these, and it will come across and it will lay up against this side piece. So I came up here at the top, laid it across the top of these two brackets, and then wherever it touched this wall here, I put a tick mark. And then I came back and I lowered it down to the bottom of these brackets, ran it across, and then wherever it fell against this wall, I put another tick mark. And then I just went ahead and connected the dots to give me this line here. And I hope that shows up. So now that I have this line here, I can lay my bracket here and start drilling holes. I'm not quite there yet. What I need to do first, I have the bracket here. Now I made this bracket as per the plans. The only thing that I have not done is drill the holes. And the bracket on the other side, I did not drill the holes per the plans. I located them where I wanted them. So you can see here I have this one laid out. This is laid out the same as the one that I had done for the other side. This thing does not want to play nice today. I don't know if those lines will show up with all the reflections, but there's a tick mark here, there's one here, and there's one here. And you can see that the line is offset from the center of the flange. It's more toward this edge, but I still have good edge distance. You want your holes closer to the edge so you have room to get in here with your pop rivet squeezer. The other thing that you want to pay attention to with these three hole locations, when you look at the structure that it attaches to, and I don't know if I'll be able to get this or not, the bracket mounts here at an angle, and you have to make sure that you don't put holes through this flange of this piece here. This flange, of course, continues all the way down through here. And you don't want those holes on the angle piece at the top so close that you end up drilling through this flange as it comes down. So just keep that in mind. But other than that, you can go ahead and drill the holes. I believe the plans call for 4 mounting holes, but I don't see a point for that because this bracket only holds this thin cover plate. It's not structural. So I just went ahead and used 3 and spaced them out like I just showed you. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and drill these holes, and then I'll line this up on the airplane with my line, and then I'll match mark these holes to the side of the airplane. But I'm not there yet. Let me get to that and then I'll come back. Alright, so here I have the bracket back in place, this bracket here. And I've got the holes drilled, I've got it clecoed in place. I got this front panel temporary clecoed back on. And what I have done now is, using this cutout as a guide, I went ahead and traced the cutout onto the bracket that's clecoed behind here. So with this cutout traced onto the bracket, I can now take the bracket off and figure out where I want to locate the holes on the bracket to mount this plate. So there's going to be a nut plate riveted to the bracket somewhere down here and another one up here at the top. So like I said, using this hole in this front plate as a guide, I just trace the hole location onto the bracket, and I'll use that to help me determine where to put the screws. So let me do that and I'll come back. All right, howdy everyone. So obviously I am back at the workbench and I have the cover plate that I was just talking about over there at the airplane. And here is the angle bracket that was temporarily clecoed to the side of the airplane. And there is where I had traced this cutout. So now what I can do, just to give me an idea, I can lay this in here and line up the cutout and then hold that in place, flip the whole thing over, and at this point, if I had a marker, I left it over on the other side. At this point, I can mark the edge of the bracket on both ends onto the face plate. That way I know not to put holes up here or down here in the corners because the bracket doesn't even make it that far. The bracket's not that long. So again, just as a simple guide, line up your tracing with the hole in the panel and then hold that there, flip the whole assembly over, and now you could mark the edges of the bracket onto your panel. So now you know where you can put your holes. So let me do that. Standby one here. You can stare at this shiny aluminum for a second while I go get this marker. All right. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and do this somewhat quickly. I've done this before on the other side, so now that I have an idea of what I'm doing, I can make this side quite a bit quicker. So that's roughly on the cutout. I'm just going to put a line here, and I know you can't see because my arm's in the way, and a line here. So now I've got two lines that represent where the bracket, where this bracket ends up resting. So now at this point I can decide how far in from the edges I want to come and how far over from this edge I want to come. Now keep in mind again, you want to stay toward this outer edge here of the bracket when you put your holes in. If you come too tight to the radius, you won't be able to get your pop rivet gun inside of there. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and figure out where I want to put these holes. I will drill those holes in this plate. Then I will cleco this entire assembly back onto the airplane and then transfer these drilled holes onto this bracket. And as always, when I get there, I'll show you what I'm talking about. Let me get working on these and I'll come back. All right, so here is the face plate, and these two black lines here represent where this angle bracket rests on the plate when it's attached to the airplane. Measuring off of these end marks, I can determine where I want to put my holes, the through holes in this plate for screws. Now remember, the angle bracket gets nut plates. So you want to have enough space from the edge of the bracket to your center hole for the nut plate and its ears, and still maintain edge distance. So from the edge of your bracket, you want edge distance to this first rivet hole, and then you want your actual through hole for the screw. So just keep that in mind. So I've got my tick marks here that represent the center hole of the nut plates, like this, roughly. And then I measured from this edge inward, what did I do? I think I did 7/16 to mark the center, or the distance from the edge inboard for the nut plate. So now, with the nut plates roughly in place, you can see I've got great edge distance from this edge to the nut plate, and I've got really good edge distance from what represents the edge of the bracket to the ear of the nut plate. So if you can imagine the bracket being roughly like this, you can see that I'll have good edge distance on the bracket when the nut plates are put on. So again, this is just to lay out the holes for this plate, but you have to keep in mind that there are going to be nut plates on the bracket. And you don't want to have your holes on this plate such that the nut plates are way out here like this. And then when you go to put your bracket in, you're not going to have anywhere to rivet. So now that I have my hole locations marked, I'm going to go ahead and drill these, and then I'll put everything back onto the airplane. So again, doing it this way, you want to make sure that you have your holes located on this such that they're slightly closer to this edge of this bracket, because if you have them too close to this radius here, you won't be able to get your pop rivet gun in here. Actually, that's not a concern on this leg because there are no pop rivets on this leg, but still, give yourself room in here for your pop rivet gun and to get your squeezer in here to do the nut plates. Alright, so these are ready to be drilled. Edge distance and everything is really good, so I'm going to go ahead and drill those, and I'll talk to you guys later. So back at the airplane, you can see that I have the panel back in place, and I also have included the this top piece here. The reason I did that is because these two pieces share this hole right here. I think I've talked about this in a previous video. This hole here, no, I take that back. Let me think here for a minute. This piece already has this hole punched in it, but this piece does not. This top piece does not have this hole in it. So I think I've talked about this before. You put this piece on and Cleco it. You put this piece over top of it and just transfer the hole from this piece to this piece. I had already done that. Now that I have both of these in place, I wanted to make sure that this hole did in fact play nice between both pieces. So I went ahead and put this piece on. Now I've got everything Clecoed together. You can see here that I have my holes drilled that I just talked about. There's one there and there's one up here. Now that I have the holes drilled in this, I can go ahead and transfer those holes into this bracket here. Then I can once again take everything apart. I can drill those holes in this bracket, and then I can put the nut plates on it. Alright, so I will do that, and I will talk to you soon.